Hello there, you are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what is making headlines with Aletha Adu and Harry Cole, who'll be with us from now until just before midnight. All right, well, let's see what is on some of those front pages. Rishi Sunak's election as Tory leader and the next Prime Minister is the lead for the Eye, with the headline, "Unite or Die, Sunak tells Tories." Similar sentiments in the Express, but adding the words, "and deliver" for our country. Aletha's paper, The Guardian, also quotes the new PM's warning to his party that what is most needed now is unity. The theme of unity or death continues on the front of the Daily Telegraph. Likewise, the front of tomorrow's Times. As the Metro puts it, here comes the Sunak, reminding us that he's the country's first Asian Prime Minister. According to the Mail, the new PM heralds a new dawn for Britain. But the Daily Mirror asks, who voted for you? As you might expect, after the recent market turmoil, the Financial Times leads with Rishi Sunak's pledge to get a grip on the problems of the economy, while City AM focuses in on what he has to do, saying now for the difficult part. The Daily Star pictures our third Prime Minister this year as October's calendar boy and asks, will he last until the end of the month? Hilarity ensues. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you see on your screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch along with us. Now, we're joined tonight by The Guardian's political correspondent, Aletha Adu, and the political editor of The Sun, Harry Cole. Aletha, Harry, good to have you with us. What a day. Heard you laughing at the Daily Star front page. We'll probably come to that a little bit later on. But let's start with the front page of the Metro, if we can. Let's bring that up and take a look at it. So, look, there's a lot for Mr. Sunak to do, and he's saying that it's just such a privilege that he's been given this job, Aletha.
I mean, what a day, what a month, what a year for us all. I was just in Parliament speaking to a number of Tory MPs, and there seemed to be a sense of calm within the building, but I think that's not the same as what the public are feeling at the moment. People are feeling very tired, very downtrodden. This is the third Prime Minister, as you said earlier this month. The Metro rightly focuses their splash on his call for unity, but I mean, this is somebody that was not voted in, as we know. This is somebody that was fighting for his own political career just 7 weeks ago. Now, he is making history for himself, being the first Hindu Prime Minister, which is great, also the first Asian Prime Minister, but equally, what does that mean, really, for Brits? I mean, he's got such a large in tray. I mean, how is he really going to get unity with such a cabinet division within his party?
Yeah, and all that division still remains, doesn't it, Harry? I mean, did you get that feeling as well, that there was a little calm? It all seemed to be a bit anticlimactic this afternoon, didn't it? Like, it was kind of...
I think that, you know, the last Prime Minister, I think, managed to get about a 24 to 48-hour honeymoon before, obviously, the very sad death of the monarch, but also, you know, that party remains a tinderbox. Just so, yes, Rishi Sunak managed to get a significant number, more than half of the MPs, but the other half weren't backing him. They scrambled around for Boris Johnson. Penny Mordaunt got pretty close to forcing this to a vote. I don't think the woes are over. Yes, you know, there is a wing of the party, sort of rump of the party almost, that are relieved that they've got their man in second time lucky, but they've done that by going against the wishes of the membership, of going against they've kicked two Prime Ministers out now. You know, the mandate is looking wafer thin right now, if it exists, and Rishi Sunak's really got to come out and speak tomorrow, right there, to the nation, because he spent the entire last 96 hours talking to Tory MPs. He hasn't said, before today, he hadn't said anything in public for weeks. And it just looks like the old smoke-filled rooms of days gone by where, you know, a group of 200-odd people decide who the next leader of this country is. He's got to talk to that nation tomorrow and explain exactly who he is, what he's going to do, and how he's going to get us out of this
Yeah,
mess.
it occurred to me today when he was speaking, I hadn't heard his voice for quite a long time. It's interesting to hear him again. Let's bring up the Express, because that is exactly this theme about Unite or Die, and that phrase goes across all the front pages mostly, doesn't it? And that's his phrase, though, isn't it?
Well, no, ironically, it's actually the one thing he hasn't said today. Is Unite. He did say we've got to, this is an existential crisis for the Conservative Party. We're not going to get another chance. They're on to, I mean, Larry over there has probably got more lives than the Tory Party, but it's, they're onto their, they're really in the last chance saloon. I would say they're possibly even in the departure lounge. But he didn't quite say Unite or Die, but he did say an existential crisis of which they have to get over.
Yeah, and can they, Aletha? I mean, you alluded to it in your first answer. It's going to be really difficult.
I mean, inflation is at a 40-year high. People are now worried about their energy bills in April, obviously. We've had the chance to scrap future support that his predecessor had enrolled in. How is somebody who is as rich as he is, I mean, he's going to be facing King Charles tomorrow, who is actually richer than, as much as people... I mean,
let's... sold up a few palaces. I think Charles would have a bit of beer money.
I mean, as much as a lot of Tories try to highlight that we shouldn't really be focusing on his wealth, there are a lot of people that feel as though, well, he is not representing me. I did not back him, as Harry was saying. How does he sort of highlight the fact that he can win a mandate? And that's something that he's going to have to reckon with. I mean, judging by his first statement, which was about 90 seconds, he looked very stiff, very robotic, a bit out of practice of public speaking, if you ask me. He really needs to come to these steps and, try and woo them and charm them, as well as, highlight...
The Tory membership were willing to overlook the flaws in Liz Truss's offer to them, which was they liked what she was saying. They were a bit uncomfortable about how she was saying it. Well, she's not she'd be the first to admit she wasn't the most charismatic and...
she told us many times.
Politician when they're speaking. Rishi Sunak's meant to be Mr. Slick, Mr. Cool. He's ditched all that, and he's trying to play all that down. And his statement launching his campaign yesterday was just a little Twitter graphic with just black and white text, where he much prefers being the sort of salesman. And I wonder whether, out of practice, I think is a really good way of putting it, whether he is bruised by the leadership election which he lost, and actually he's a little bit at sea now, and he's not, as we said earlier, he's not going to get a second chance at this, so he really does need to pull one out the bag tomorrow. Yeah,
and where does it start then? I mean, the speech is one thing, obviously, then you can have PMQs as well. So, I mean, what are we expecting to hear from them? Let's look at the front page of the Eye as well now, that also goes to that Unite or Die, which you told us is not something he said today.
It's not in quote marks. I mean, the essence is there.
The essence is there. So where does he start then? Because, I mean...
Look, I think he does need to talk to people who are worried about how, not necessarily paying their energy bills, but paying their mortgage bills, people that can't afford to buy, rent a house, people that are worried about their jobs. There is, and it is fair to say that all of these problems are affecting all of Western financial, leaders. All of, the inflation is rampant across the United States, across Europe. The energy prices is particularly exacerbated in Europe because of the war in Ukraine. We get that. Everyone understands that. That has been hammered home. If anything, previous leaders have been saying that too much without explaining what they're actually going to do. I mean, you've got to level with the public. Yes, we have these problems, but I think people want to hear what are the solutions.
Does he have space to bring those solutions? A man who was Chancellor, who made some tough decisions himself, or feels like he made some tough decisions. Do you think that there is a little leeway for him to make some tough calls going forward?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, people are desperate for him to, lay out some sort of solutions. I mean, we haven't heard from him during this really short...
But difficult ones.
But difficult ones, I guess so. We heard him about 7 weeks ago during a Tory leadership race that he lost initially to Liz Truss, when he was saying that he doesn't want to tell fairy tales. I mean, is he going to repeat those sorts of phrases tomorrow? He really needs to outline, I think, and just try and lay out his firm stance out of those steps.
I think it's got to be reality-based as well, in the fact that, yes, the previous Prime Minister caused problems, but there are already problems coming down the track. We've got a big announcement from the Bank of England on the 3rd of November that could potentially see interest rates and people's mortgages rise even more. There has to be a bit of levelling and a bit of reality in the fact that this is going to require some public service cuts. What those cuts are, he's going into the House of Commons to face Keir Starmer on Wednesday. The first question Keir Starmer's going to ask is, right, where's the axe going to fall? And he needs to have answers on that. And I hope he spent instead of licking his wounds for the last 7 weeks, I hope he's been actually thinking about what he would be doing differently, because he really hasn't had much time to make those decisions.
Yeah, let's take a look at the front page of The Guardian now. Again, that phrase, unite or die, we're not going to dwell on that. But one decision he will have to make, of course, is about this national insurance rise. Now, of course, that was his big plan, wasn't it? £12 billion. There's a big hole in the public finances. What are your feelings? Is there any chance that we could have a rollback on the non-rollback on that, do you think?
I mean, I think he'd be careful to not make too many U-turns and try to overshadow that. I mean, yeah.
If you U-turn on a U-turn, right, U-turn, you're basically back to where you started. Right.
Oh.
I think, look, people are going to be baffled. If you're saying we're going to raise national insurance, then we're going to cut it, then we're going to raise it, or then we're going to actually raise the threshold so you're not paying, and people are just like, hang on. You just said we were going to get an income tax cut 6 weeks ago, and now we're not. So,
but that's one of the tough decisions, isn't it? Because that is a lot of money that he could bring back, and it was his idea.
It is, but I think, he was competent. If any sort of mandate he has, Liz Truss, hid a lot of the things she wanted to do, like the 45p tax reforms, from the Tory membership. One thing she did say she was going to do is reverse that national insurance. She did beat him comprehensively with the Tory membership on that. So I would hasten he'll probably avoid touching that third rail.
And Aletha, where then do you think will the tough decisions be made by him?
I mean, we've had, rows over things like fracking, for example, which have been, really heated amongst the party. I mean, he has been largely silent on those issues. I mean, we've seen climate change is not getting any better. We look at the weather we've just had over the weekend. How is he going to spell issues like that out? How is he going to reckon with the public and tell them that actually I am the Prime Minister that will, improve ambulance waiting times, for example, instead of essentially just blaming Labour, who have been in opposition for the last, 12 years. He can't simply fall back on those personality politics anymore.
All right.
Really.
Before we go to break, let's take a look at the front page of the Daily Mail now. As you can see, it describes it as a new dawn for Britain, and it is you laugh, but it's a huge moment, isn't it? The first Asian, the first Hindu Prime Minister. It's a big, and actually, what's probably most remarkable is that we're not finding it that remarkable.
That is brilliant. The only reason I took a brief laugh there was that the Daily Mail has spent the last 6 months kicking seven out of Rishi Sunak. Yeah. But there we go. They've got their man now.
And Aletha, just the fact that it is, as they put it, a new dawn for Britain, but just the sort of the moment that we're in history that an Asian man's going to understand.
Diwali. We've got a Hindu Prime Minister for the first time. I don't think it's being celebrated enough, sadly, and that's because of the turmoil that Liz Truss has left the state of our country, and that's a sad fact in a way. But obviously he is one of our youngest Prime Ministers ever, also, I believe. He's made quite the comeback. Yeah, it's incredible. Really.
All right, Aletha, Harry, thank you very much for that. Plenty more to come from you guys over the break. Now, the pressure on the incoming Prime Minister to get a grip on the economy, and we'll have more on that coming up next. Hello and welcome back. You are watching the press preview. With me is the political editor of The Sun, Harry Cole, and The Guardian's political correspondent, Aletha Adu. Guys, thanks for staying with us. Let's have a look at the front page of the Financial Times now. Of course, markets have seemed to have been a bit becalmed by the fact that Rishi Sunak is going to be the next Prime Minister, and the Times they're saying that Sunak is vowing to get a grip on the economy. Can he?
He's going to have to get his wiggle on. He's got until sort of October the 31st is when they're meant to be publishing the forecast of the figures. There was a provisional draft of that OBR forecast that showed there was a £72 billion black hole. Jettisoning some of Liz Truss's tax cuts has got that down to £30 billion. That leaves £40 billion still to find. I suspect £10 billion of that might come in some sort of jiggling of visas and boosting high skills immigration. So that's another £30 billion you've got to find. And you're starting to look at big budgets, defence, education. Where is this stuff going to come from? Already cut to the bone, already suffering from inflation. These budgets are already hit by inflation. There ain't much left to cut. So, are they going to salami slice off everywhere, or are they going to go for big cuts in sort of big departments? obviously, that's all incredibly fraught. There's not a majority to touch pensions, it seems. There's not a majority to touch the NHS, and you might not, you might be losing defence secretaries and ministers if you try to cut defence at a time of war. So, big questions.
Yeah, at least let's get you to comment on the front page of City AM, because, I mean, they lay out there now for the difficult part, really, and that is where the difficult will be. I mean, we've got a former Chancellor in the top job, a guy who is Chancellor now who seems to have done a pretty fair job of calming down the market. So, and we saw the impact that the markets can have on the way politics are run.
It's quite depressing in a way, though, Kamal, that we're having to look at the markets again and be like, oh, actually, we've actually got a Prime Minister that is not, making things go crazily out of control. That's surely, the role of a Prime Minister. But despite that, I think, as you say, he's got some tough decisions to make. And it's whether he's going to be bold enough to put the right people in the right cabinet positions, whether he's going to be trying to appease different, sides of the political party. Is he going to try and keep, a number of characters who are larger than life, who are, more towards the Boris Johnson era, who might not agree with those tax cuts? Or is he going to be the sensible politician that many of his colleagues are touting him to be? That remains to be seen.
You don't have the answer yet for us, yeah. What do you think?
Source told my colleague, Pippa Crerar, that, we may see the likes of Dominic Raab being installed as Home Secretary. That would be quite the move. It would be another change, in such a critical...
I hope he does better than he did in the Foreign Office, because, it wasn't long ago he was, sort of removed from that job for basic incompetence of the Afghan withdrawal. So a lot of these characters that are touting themselves as, comeback kids, they have long histories as well, and I suspect that will be pointed out quite quickly.
Yeah, and before we move on to our next segment, let's take a look at the Daily Star, because it made you both laugh as we saw it before. Let's bring this up. This is Rishi Sunak. These calendars are pretty old school, actually. Sort of poster calendars.
It's a generational thing. I haven't seen a calendar like that on a
garages,
wall
right? But this is quite funny, because Rishi is October's man.
Absolutely. We're into our fourth Chancellor this year, third PM. I suspect, I had a bet with a colleague of when the Tory MPs will start saying they're putting letters in, and I think we all agreed about 2 weeks.